Welcome back to America Decides. The Trump campaign is trying to distance itself from disparaging remarks made at the Madison Square Garden rally, where a comedian, so-called, referred to Puerto Rico as, quote, a floating island of garbage. Comment is also drawing criticism from some Republicans. Florida Senator Rick Scott, who's in a campaign re-election mode, was among them, saying, quote, this joke bombed for a reason. It's not funny and it's not true. Puerto Ricans are amazing people and amazing Americans. Chuck Rocha and Bryan Lanza join us now. Chuck is a Democratic strategist who, back in the day, senior advisor for Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns. Bryan Lanza, right now, senior advisor for the Trump campaign. So, Bryan, let me start with you. Net, the Madison Square Garden rally a success or more damaging than it was worth?
Well, listen, I think it ultimately was a success. If you look at what the undecided voter is looking for, they're looking to see the final message going into President Trump. As where some people are talking about, some of the jokes that were taking place, the vast majority of people are talking about that closing message. It's inflation, it's economy, it's immigration, and those are the issues we're going to talk to at the end. We have a plan to address those, and that's the message we're going to be going forward, as opposed to Kamala Harris, who has no closing message other than she broke it and Trump will fix it.
Chuck.
I could disagree a little bit with my good friend Bryan. I think his message of hate and dissent last night got in the way of his message of hate and dissent. But that's just my opinion. But look, the big thing last night in the Latino community was this comment you said about Puerto Rico. And look, I've been running campaigns a long time, and normally I would understand what the campaign's positions are. They walk back the statement, but I think the damage was done. And there's one thing about this that I've been saying is that Puerto Ricans are a different breed of Latino, and I mean that with all due respect to my Puerto Rican friends and brothers and sisters, is when you talk about their island, whether you're joking or not, and I myself might have made that mistake once or twice, you don't joke about their island, and I think this does have some effect.
Listen, I would add that this was a third party that made the joke. This wasn't President Trump. This wasn't the campaign. This wasn't J.D. Vance. Whereas opposed to what we have the same day that took place, you had the Governor Walz, part of the Harris ticket, said that people who were attending this rally were Nazi supporters and were Nazis. I'm sorry, we had a Holocaust survivor there. We had a Holocaust survivor there that the governor of Minnesota is calling a Nazi. That is offensive, and that is a direct statement from the campaign, not some third party. That's offensive.
The Trump campaign is in part responsible for the entire program, though, is it not? And you knew there'd be eyes on this rally. You wanted eyes on this rally. You got eyes on this rally.
Yeah, we got a lot of eyes.
Should have been tighter, shouldn't it?
Yeah, listen, you can control as much as you can control, but when a comic decides to ad-lib, you're sort of stuck at what he says.
But do you think within the atmosphere and within Trump rhetoric, that comic felt that he wasn't actually going out of bounds?
I mean, listen, if that's the case, a lot of comics are going out of bounds, whether they're comics supportive of President Trump or comics supportive of Kamala Harris. Comics constantly go out of bounds. And so to try to hold a campaign accountable for a comic going out of bounds, I'm sure we have a long list of comics who have offended people.
Okay, Chuck, it's just artistic license. Come on, what are you making a big deal about?
I put together a lot of these rallies, and I'm not going to hold somebody to something a comic said to a campaign, but you got to have a tighter handle over this when you're running a campaign like this for President of the United States. But I'll set that to the side and go back to the American people have a choice last night. Whether it was a great rally or not a great rally, I think the rally speaks for itself, and I think that it does have some effect. We're in the last bit here. I said this to somebody earlier. I was like, look, normally this don't really matter. Quote, unquote, it's baked in. But folks have ballots now. And I was thinking about 600,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania have ballots in their hands. And I think that it matters when folks are texting them like we did this morning. We text that to every Puerto Rican in Pennsylvania. That's my job. I'm a strategist. It's something I can use to tell Puerto Ricans there's a difference in these campaigns.
Quick question to both of you. Would it, under normal circumstances, have been permissible or within the campaign's responsibility to clear the remarks beforehand?
And we did. Listen, that is always
comedians?
Absolutely. We had to make edits to some of the speeches in the past, and we continue to do that at all our rallies, and we're going to continue to do it forward. We hear what people say. We review some of the things, and yeah, sometimes you have to make edits. So the
set that the comedian presented was not the set that he delivered?
Correct.
What does that tell you?
That tells you the comedian goes out of bounds all the time. You really can't control comedians. But what you can control is what your closing message is in the final weeks of the campaign. And the closing message for this campaign is focused on the economy and focused on immigration.
So, Chuck, talk to me about that, because there is a sense, maybe among some reporters who just don't know how else to get around this, but it's even showing up in polling data, that the closing message of the two campaigns is sharper for Trump than it is for Harris. How would you evaluate that?
Trump should be winning this race by 60 points based off of what we know about everything that's went on in the last 4 years. As a strategist, when you're running against an incumbent whose economy may not be as good as it was 4 years before, that's all you have to say, and he should be 70-30 winning. And it was almost that when Joe Biden was the president. Every advantage is in their favor. I'll give that to my good friend Bryan. Like, there's no doubt. But what gets in the way of that message is what you saw last night. If we just ran on that message, he'd be kicking all of our butts.
Bryan?
Listen, I think the biggest advantage that the Harris campaign
should Trump be farther ahead, like he was when it was Trump against Biden?
Listen, when it was Trump against Biden before the debate, it was only a couple points race, so and we are sort of within the margin of error. But what I would say this, I think the biggest advantage that the Harris campaign has the media. You know, they're the ones who are sort of filtering what seems to be the most important thing. Like I said, I just mentioned on this show, yesterday Tim Walz called a Holocaust survivor a Nazi for attending the rally. Nobody's talking about that. Here we had a third-party candidate, a third-party jokester tell a joke that fell flat, that the campaign said doesn't reflect our values, and we're talking about that. We're 3 minutes into that conversation and 30 seconds in Tim Walz, and that's why the media and that's why Harris has the campaign, has the advantage.
Look, I understand what Bryan's doing. The campaign should be doing it. They want to pick out one thing that's different in what's happened last night. It's called spin, and I get that, right? And that's part of what we're doing.
That's offensive is what it is.
What it is called GNC, which is good and crazy. Good and crazy is what you saw last night, and I don't think that's what you should be in this campaign on.
So, last minute or so, very quickly, Bryan, give me a sense of the Trump ground game and the Harris ground game from you, Chuck. Go ahead, Bryan.
Listen, it's full steam ahead. We've worked with outside groups. We've raised a lot of money for it. The outside groups are showing the data coming forward. We've seen some of the early votes. Look in Nevada. For the first time in a long time, Republicans are leading the early vote in Nevada. Look at Arizona. So, you know, we're happy with the progress we've made with the third parties. They're going to continue to focus, and we're very happy with our GOTV operation.
Chuck Rocha, you know what he meant, third parties. That means outside, not inside the building.
Harris has 51 offices in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump has 23. We're going to see whose game's better. Maybe they can do more with less. I don't think so.
Chuck Rocha, Bryan Lanza, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.